Hello and good evening, and welcome to the end week edition of I'm Still Playing. I'm running a little bit behind this week. I typically try to get this video out on Sunday night, but a last minute change in schedules had me doing D&D on Sunday night, and so I wasn't able to get to it until, well, today. Here's Monday. So I'm wrapping up in Mechwarrior clans right now. I'm finishing up the last of the campaign. And I'll definitely be done this week in time for Dragon Age Veilguard, right? But even though I'm not quite completely finished yet, I'm definitely ready to talk about some design decisions that the team at Piranha has made that just have me going WTF. And I'm not even talking about like content within the game, right? I'm not talking about just the quantity of missions or the almost pitiable number of mechs that there end up being in the game that you're allowed to play. I'm just talking about design decisions made within the framework of the game that I think if they had made some slightly different decisions or improved some things in some ways would make the game so much better. So without further ado, let's talk about 5 things that I would fix in Mechwarrior clans. Okay, issue number 1, mech and equipment sorting. So I don't know why in the marketplace they tell you that it's being sorted alphabetically and then not give you any means by which to change that sorting. I'm guessing maybe they intended at some point for you to be able to change the sorting method, and whether due to feature creep or just running out of time, they didn't implement that. But for the love of God, Piranha, if you're going to give me only one sorting method, then don't do it alphabetically. Sort the mechs by weight class and then by tonnage within the weight class. And do this both in the marketplace and also over here in the mech bay. Especially in the mech bay, once I've got a decent number of mechs built up, I don't want to sort this list alphabetically. I want to find mechs by weight class. And then within the weight class, I want the heaviest to the lightest. So let's sort them that way if that's the only way that you can give me to sort them. And then while we're at it, let's take a look at the loadout screen. I mean, at least you've done us the favor of breaking out weapons from all the other equipment, but then within all the other equipment, it's still sorted alphabetically and not by function. And that's not ever how I want to look at this list. I'm always looking for some specific piece of equipment, right? I want armor pods, or I want ammunition, or I want double heat sinks, or targeting computers. So let's sort these things by function. Put all the armor pods together, put all the equipment together, and put all the ammunition together. Make it easy for me to find the stuff that I'm looking for. And again, these aren't really big changes, but if you made these changes, it's just a little quality of life change that can make the game better overall. Okay, number 3, let's provide a better means of balancing mission difficulty than the crazy arbitrary tonnage requirements. I mean, nobody, well, I should say, I get why this system is there, right? You want to sort of limit the amount of power that players can bring into the mission so that you can balance that against the difficulty that you've provided in the mission. 100% understandable. But there are ways that you can do this that work within the context of the lore or use existing gameplays that you've already built that still provide with some player agency without just arbitrarily saying, sorry, 275 tons, that's all you can do. For instance, in Mechwarrior Mercenaries, right, you had a system by which you could bid different amounts or you sort of negotiate the terms of the contract. Now, you're not a mercenary, so you may not be negotiating the terms of the contract here, but you can still provide a bidding system, right, to bid, I want to bid more tons and get less reward for it. And use some of that same system that you brought over, that you had in Mercenaries, to allow the player to decide for themselves to trade off salvage or rewards or experience in order to be able to bring more tons of mechs into the mission. And remember, you're already, especially on the first playthrough, going to be restricted somewhat in the mechs that you can bring to the mission just by virtue of the fact that you've only unlocked so many mechs so far, right? So when you get to mission 3, you're not bringing any heavy mechs into mission 3 regardless, not for the first time, because you haven't played enough to unlock that. And then once you're going to the second playthrough or your sim pod, who cares how much tonnage you bring to it, right? That's the point at which you want to allow the player to waffle stomp the content because they've already seen the content, they've already completed the mission in the campaign version of this. So then let them just throw away the tonnage requirements and bring whatever they want. The point is you have the existing systems by which you've used before in order to provide for this, and you can even do so in a way that sort of works within the lore of the game to allow players to have some choices about whether or not they want to bring more or less tonnage into a particular mission and still not make it feel like a very sort of arbitrary, deterministic thing. Okay, and speaking of mission rewards, that actually brings me to the third thing that I would fix in Mechwarrior clans. Let's return the notion that things I do in the mission affect my rewards at the end. So for instance, in Mercenaries and even in Battletech, one of the core ideas is that if you destroyed mechs in certain ways, that could affect how much and the type of salvage you got at the end. Leg a mech or kill it with a clean headshot, and you could almost always salvage the entire mech. But if you cored a mech or you set off its reactor, then you got nothing but absolutely a few pieces of scrap metal, right? So in clans, they've done away with the notion of salvaging actual pieces of mechs to assemble on your own, but rather they reward you with components, mech components, equipment components, and weapon components. Now, I'm not even sure I agree with that as a design decision, because I kind of like the idea of getting loot from mechs and getting mech pieces that I can put together. But even if we stay with this, right, there still needs to be a way to indicate to the player that what you did and how you killed stuff affected the number of components that you got at the end of the mission. Now, I understand that with so many of the missions having you kill literally dozens upon dozens of mechs and VTOLs and armors, you can't just display every mech that you killed and indicate whether or not you legged it or head it. But you can break it down in percentages, right? You could show on the screen, hey, as a part of the mission loadout at the end, 20% of the mechs were destroyed by head or leg shots. You get 32% more mech components. Or 30% of the mechs were destroyed and had their components shot off. You get 25% more weapon components. But the point is, show me that the way I played the mission and the things I did in the mission affect the components and the amount of rewards that I get at the end. Because this is really an impetus to want to play missions over again to see if you can be more efficient and get better rewards for them at the end. The fourth thing, let's make progressing the pilots more interesting, or at least give me more choices, okay? And I think there are a variety of ways that we can do this, but I'm just going to propose something that's extremely straightforward and will work 100% within the existing system. Let's take that collection of perks that already exist, that are already assigned to the pilots, and put them in a pool, and allow me to decide which pilot gets which perks. And for bonus points, maybe you provide some other perks, right? But even just within the perks that we have, allow me to allocate them to the pilots. This accomplishes really two very important things. First of all, it gives the player, me, a little bit more agency. And again, I'm always looking for ways to give the player more choices and more agency over how they play the game. For instance, I get to decide if Naomi is the missile person or the beam person. Maybe Jaden isn't like the jack of all trades, right, that the current allocation system would have you believe, but rather is 100% focused on heat management and beams. And the second thing that this accomplishes, and this is actually the really important thing, is that by giving the player the choices to make these decisions, you give the player a reason to play the campaign a second time, right? And ultimately, that's what you want, because there's precious little evergreen content in this game as it is. So allowing me to play through the campaign once, where Naomi is my long-range missile and sensor pilot, but then in the next time, Naomi is the upfront and short-range brawling chick that doesn't take shit from anyone, that's a reason to play again. And while you're at it, let's just do away with eversion as a perk altogether. It's a non-choice. There's never any question about whether or not you're going to take evasion. You absolutely need it for every pilot. So just give all the pilots evasion at max level and remove it from the list of perks and allow us to go on to make some interesting choices about the other perks that we get. Okay, and finally, the fifth and last thing that I would fix, well, maybe not the last thing, but at least the fifth thing in this list is also the most obvious one. And in fact, it's so obvious it almost goes without saying, but we're going to have to say it anyway. And that's to allow mid-mission saves or checkpoints. Now look, I have to believe this was a design choice. It's not a technical limitation. In 2024, serializing game state and player state in an Unreal game is an absolute known and understood quantity. And in fact, they're already doing it, right? For every mission, if you look here, there's an autosave that happens at the beginning of the mission and at the end of the mission, so that you can easily restart back at the very beginning. But somewhere in Piranha Games, there is a producer or a design director, or maybe it's the game director themselves, who believes that this is the way. If thou fail, thou shalt start over from the very beginning. And you know what? 10 years ago, that absolutely would have been acceptable. But in this day and age, games need to be more respectful of players' times. And this decision just straight up doesn't respect the player's time. I mean, a lot of times these missions are often 30 to 45 minutes in length. And almost inevitably, the most difficult part of the mission comes at the very final last stage of the mission. So if I fail on that last boss, or that last lance of, or star of mechs, I should say, I shouldn't have to repeat the first 30 minutes all over again just to make another attempt at that final dropship. And you can do this easily already with the tools you have. You don't have to build a single bit of new UI in order to do this, right? Just at every cinematic trigger an autosave just like you do at the beginning, and allow me to load those autosaves. So at the very least, I can reload my mission from the last cinematic and finish this mission with the lance in whatever the state that it's currently in when I made the save. And by doing this, you'll respect my time, and you're actually going to encourage me to play the game more, because I don't feel like I have to start over as soon as I make a terrible mistake from the very beginning and I wash out because I'm restarting all of the missions, which I guarantee you is happening to a significant number of the people that are playing your game right now. Okay, and I think that'll probably do it for this week. I hope that has been at least somewhat illustrative. You might think with all this negativity towards Mechwarrior clans that, like, man, he is really down on the game. And absolutely nothing is further from the truth. I am thoroughly enjoying this game. I'm loving playing through the campaign. I'm looking really forward to getting to the end of it here in the next week. I'm just overall, I'm having a great time with it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some things that Piranha Games and the makers of this game couldn't do to just improve the overall quality of life in this game. So I hope you're enjoying the game. Let me know if you are. This will be the last Mechwarrior Clans video I suspect I'll make, because Dragon Age Veilguard comes out next week, and we'll be playing that. In the meantime, wherever you are, whatever games you're playing, good luck and good hunting. Talk to you soon.